And hello, welcome to the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up. My name's John Galloway. I'm a PM on the .NET community team, and today I'm joined by a huge cast. We're going to be talking about port tunneling for ASP.NET Core projects. So welcome Carolina, Julia, and many-time guest Syed. All right, so first it's traditional, we always have a vote for the best background. Unfortunately, I think Syed always wins this one. Okay, I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to show the community links this week. So let's grab those. I always tell everyone else, make sure you have your screen ready to share, and then I don't have my screen ready to share. Let's bring that up, and here we go. The community links are also here, and they're also posted in the comments. And all right, so let's start through them. First of all, this is pretty cool. This just announced end of last week. This is built-in container support for .NET SDK. So what this allows you to do is .NET publish, and then passing in the right parameter, the publish profile, and you actually get a container, a full container. And so, Chet talks about why you would do this, and then talks about some specific use cases where, like for instance, like local development and also in a CI pipeline. So this is the kind of thing where if you need to build an image as part of, like from command line, this is a lot simpler, and they can also make sure that they pull in the right dependent files, etc. So pretty cool. Just a second. Okay. So that is that one. This one is really neat. This is the Azure App Service has moved over to using Kestrel and YARP. And this was a big V team at Microsoft. This was, go over a long period of time. And they were able to do a lot of cool things with this. Huge throughput improvement, lower CPU use. They're also able to take advantage of new features that were more difficult when relying on previous IIS-based infrastructure. So now, for instance, HTTP3 and gRPC. So really, really cool stuff. They talk through a lot of like impact and how they went through and did it in the blog post. And I'm planning to get them on the show sometime soon, and we'll talk through this in more detail. So very neat to see that. I've got 2 posts that are part of just a large series. And in general, what I want to do with these is just kind of point them out and let you know they exist. This is really cool. First of all, Taisir talking about Dapr integration with Azure Container Apps. And Taisir's been building out this whole kind of series on this integration stuff. And so this one specifically talking about integrating and all the stuff you can do with that. So just walk through to all the commands, etc. So cool stuff, and especially if you're working with Dapr, this is a great series to kind of follow along with. So, okay, so Anthony, I picked just one, but he's been doing a ton of stuff on gRPC, and so this is a great one that he did recently, and this is on using interceptors to handle gRPC exceptions correctly on the server side. So there's a lot of different kind of ways you can do that. gRPC has some things that are built in for that. So an interceptor allows you to, it's kind of like, as he says here, kind of like middleware for gRPC. And he goes through and shows how to do that. And then points out some of the benefits kind of towards the end in his example, where he shows that you can integrate in with the exception details. So you can, for instance, he shows the integration there, and he shows that it's kind of integrated in with the correlation ID, etc. So very cool. Okay, one from Andrew Locke here. And the main thing I like about this is that this is an update. I always love it when bloggers update their previous posts. And so this is one on updating a previous one on cancellation tokens for minimal APIs. So Andrew had previously done a post on the MVC controllers. And with cancellation tokens, that allows you to cancel the long-running request. And minimal APIs, you have kind of a different API surface, different integration. So it just talks through how to go through and do that. And sometimes some of those APIs, what I've found, you end up kind of having to backfit and kind of turn on some things that were a little bit hidden by the top level statements. So it, just talks through doing that. All right. This one I wanted to highlight. I don't actually normally call out Reddit posts on here. I don't look at them enough, but this one was brought to my attention several times. This one is really neat. This is a overview on authentication for ASP.NET Core, and just talking through all the kind of different types of cookies and all the different schemes, etc. We had a previous show with Damian Bowden going through some of this stuff in some detail, and we're going to have him back on again soon. I'm working with him to schedule that. But this is great just in terms of that sort of kind of explaining how things work. I think from conversations I've seen, especially on Reddit, there have been some where it's like authentication is too complicated. And I think a lot of that comes down to not understanding all the different things that you have to manage with authentication to do it right. So anyways, this is a long detailed post talking about what the problem is, what all authentication is, and then how ASP.NET Core fits in. All right, just a few more. This one is near and dear to my heart. I'm actually kind of managing a lot of the content for .NET Conf coming up, and we're getting down to the wire for the call for speakers. So this is someone anyone in the community can submit, especially for the community day. We do a 24-hour around the world thing, and so we're within I think 10 days left. So get your submissions in. All right, I've got a couple from this Neil Swinburger guy who happens to be watching now, which is great. So this is cool. This is he took the minimal API and created a VB template for it. So you can do minimal APIs with VB, but you just need to set that up yourself. My mouse is seeming frozen. Okay, so he talks through doing that, and there's a few different ways. What he ended up doing is just kind of opening the two projects and sort of rationalizing between the two of them. So comparing the C# minimal template and updating the VB console app. While I was looking at this, Niels, if you want extra credit, there is, and Syed would know all about this, there's a really cool project template system where you can create project templates. And this seems like something where, Niels, our community member, could create one and publish that, right? So anyways, I love that project templates, the custom project templates. I wish people did that more. I used to give a whole bunch of conference talks on that specifically. All right, one more from Niels. This is neat. This is on using port tunneling with Twilio webhooks. So I thought this was pretty cool. We're talking about port tunneling today. And so he shows a really cool use case of this where you're working with webhooks from a vendor. You need the service to be able to communicate with your application, and you want to be able to develop on localhost. And normally that's really difficult. You need to set something up in order to allow somebody else to contact you. Just a second. I have a link that Syed sent me. So this is it's .NET Core templates. So this is a really cool system. This is allows basically what I love about this, the way this is put together, is that you can create a project, you can run it, and then you can say, that's awesome, turn it into a template for me. So the previous way of making custom templates was pretty complicated. And I think this is such a smooth, simple experience for doing that instead. All right, so back to Niels' post. So he just talks through kind of the problem that we're solving and shows setting that up. I'm not going to go into too much on that because that's what this call is about. But he shows setting up port tunneling and then shows making those calls. And in this case, specifically responding to an SMS request. So for this, you've configured Twilio, you've given it your endpoint, your URL endpoint, and then it's calling back into you. So pretty neat. And then here he shows having an external application call into your app. So this is, as I'm getting set to turn it over to the team here, this is the post that the team did on announcing the private preview. And I'll turn it over to you folks and you can tell me where it's at now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. And also, I would like to say I have at least one vote for my background.
I was going to say, at the beginning, I was like, oh, of course it's Syed. And then I was like, wait a minute, I don't know. Yeah, the lighting, you got the pictures. I mean, yeah.
It might be close. It might be close. Yeah. But thank you so much for having us here today. As you mentioned, my name is Carolina, and I'm a product manager on developer tools here at Microsoft. And we are so excited to be here to talk about port tunneling in Visual Studio, which was announced at Build 2022, which was the blog post link you just shared back in May. And I'm joined today by Julia from Power Platform team and Syed from the Visual Studio.NET Tools team. Cool. And just for some background, if you're not familiar with port tunneling, essentially what it's doing is enabling connections between machines that cannot directly connect to each other. And what's particularly great about it is you can expose your local host server over the internet and mitigate the need for deployment when you're debugging and sharing in progress work, which is, of course, great for ad hoc development. And today, Syed will be showing us 2 demos of port tunneling in Visual Studio. And then Julia will be showing us a demo that uses port tunneling in Visual Studio to debug your web APIs. After that, Syed will share some of our upcoming roadmap and some mock-ups as we talk a little more about where it is today and where we're going. And then we will wrap up today's stand-up with an open Q&A. And the links you see here, if you just want to go ahead and get started, if any of them, go for it. And I can cover them at the end as well. But the first link is to join our private preview waitlist. And it's actually divided into 2 sections. So let's say you've already signed up or you're not interested in signing up today. The first question will ask that. And if you hit no, it'll go to the second half of the form, which is asks for some feedback. And we want to learn a little more about your experiences with tunneling today. and your expectations for port tunneling in Visual Studio. The next link is a link to Julia's documentation. So it will be a great reference after today's call. And then the third link is the link that was just shared from Syed's blog post. And then if you just want to stay in touch with us and talk about anything related to tunneling, feel free to email us at tunnelsfeedback@microsoft.com. We always love to chat.
Awesome.
So off to you, Syed.
All right.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you very much. The link to the blog post was already shared in the chat, but it's aka.ms/vs-port forwarding. This page here should have everything that you need to get started with this private preview. So there's a couple steps here. So number one, you need to sign up for the private preview, and that's with this link here. At some point, we will transition to public preview where you don't need to do this sign up, but we're not quite there today. And then you want to download the latest preview of Visual Studio. When this blog post went out, it was 17.3 1.1. But this link here will give you the latest preview of Visual Studio 17.3. And when 17.4 goes out, you will not need the preview. So it will just be baked into 17.4 itself as a kind of vanilla feature there. And then after you've got that preview, you'll need to enable port tunneling for web applications. And the account that you used when you signed up for the private preview should also be the same account that you're using to sign in to Visual Studio. All right, and then from there, we're going to go ahead and get started here. So I'm just going to do I'll just show you how to get started with a new kind of vanilla app here. So I'll create a new ASP.NET Core web app. Go ahead and click Create here. And then after this gets created, I will go ahead and just going to go ahead and run this basically with Control F5 to start without debugging. So that's the same as this little green button here. So we'll go ahead and get this one started up, and it's going to show up on my other screen. So here, now I've got my web app loaded and running. We can see it's running on localhost 7059. Let me go ahead and close this. Where is my mouse? Oh, hold on a second. My mouse has disappeared. That's okay. Something's going on. I can see it on my other screen, but I can't see it. Sorry, something's happened with my mouse. This never happened to me before. My mouse totally disappeared. Okay. I can see it on my StreamYard though.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me see if I can. Wow, this is. You ever had this happen to you, John? Let me start closing some stuff. Hold on.
Oh, there he went. So I think he probably closed the browser.
Yeah. No, in the meantime, I can also just start answering some questions I see popping up in the chat.
Yeah. So there was one that said, and Syed, I think, answered this, but can you talk about the kind of private preview, why it's a private preview? Or?
Yeah, of course. So right now, port tunneling in Visual Studio is still in private preview. We are using the private preview just to learn more about, your expectations and see how your experience is going so far. So public preview, of course, will be coming up at some point, but we don't have an exact timeline to share right now. But yeah.
There was one other question of if it's a paid feature or if it will be. Do we have anything to say about that?
Yeah, so right now we're working through the billing model, so nothing to share today. But right now, during the private preview, it is free.
Okay, cool. All right,
I'm back. Sorry about that.
Nope, no worries.
And then I don't know. I think StreamYard did something to my mouse there. Anyways, all right. So in here, there's this is just I just literally created this ASP.NET Core web app, right? So now let me go back here. I'm going to copy and paste a couple of these properties here that we need to add to launch settings.json. The first is zoomed in way too much there. The first is create tunnel equals true. So that's the one that says, hey, I want you to hook up a tunnel to this. And the other one is very important, tunnel authentication. You want to set this to, there's 3 values, public, private, or org. And I go into that here. But with the build that's available for users in that preview, this is very important to set this before you actually run it, because it might get it might get locked in, and the default is private, which means only your account can use it. So definitely do set this every time that you set this create tunnel. We've got some bugs to fix over there as well. All right, so let me go ahead and paste those in. And we saw last time that it started with localhost. So now this time we should see that it's going to start up on a, and you know what, I'm not going to do that zoom thing because I think the zoom might have messed it up, but you can see that, let me just go ahead and paste this into my notepad, that it's no longer running on localhost, but instead a public URL, which anybody can then access because I set that to public, right? Okay, great. Let me go ahead and close out of that. I've got some other demos here that I want to share. Let me reset my little timer. Okay, all right. So first I have a, it's a web app here basically. So let's go ahead and run this. We'll take a look at what we have. Okay. All right. So this is basically, I want to know, you know, what is everybody's favorite type of ice cream, right? Is it vanilla? Is it chocolate? Is it strawberry? Let me bring that here. Let me bring my output over here as well so we can kind of monitor what's happening. As I vote for this, we can see that I'm logging the user agent and the vote. So I get a vote for vanilla from a Windows machine, a vote for strawberry from a Windows machine, and then let me just fix this real quick. I'm going to get rid of this handler one, reload that. And then another kind of cool feature about Edge, I don't know if you guys know this about Edge, but if you go into the URL bar, you can then generate a QR code for this. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and scan this on my phone. Go ahead and scan that on my phone. Okay, so here I am on my phone, and we can, I don't know if you can see that, but that's the web app. I'm going to vote for chocolate over here, and I will refresh my screen because I don't have any like fancy auto refresh. And then what I'm going to do is I want to go ahead and paste this into the chat. Or John, I'll paste it into our private chat, and then can you paste that somewhere?
Will do.
And then we'll kind of slowly monitor this, basically. I'm noticing some other ones, even some other people picked up on it already, Macintosh, Linux. Wow, we're getting a lot of kind of votes over here. So we got vanilla, chocolate, strawberries coming into the kind of second lead there. Looks like vanilla is kind of taken off over here. I think vanilla is probably going to be the end runner over here, probably the winner here. But let's take another look. I'll do another refresh here. Wow, vanilla is the clear kind of winner.
This allows
here.
more than one vote per person.
Yeah, you can just blast it, John, if you want. You know, I'm just going to blast it over here on my side too, right? This is a very basic kind of app, but you know, the cool part about this is, you know, if you really wanted to create something like this, it would take a lot more than, you know, just what I'm doing, right? This was like, you know, a small number of lines of code, and then we're sharing it here with the whole community, right? And this is kind of a cool way to just do a live kind of survey without any kind of money or anything, right? And all these people are connecting over to my local host machine, right? So I think that's really cool. All right, so now somebody is really kind of loving chocolate because somebody's really kind of hitting the chocolate button over here, I'm noticing. All right, so that's cool. We will check back on this later on. I'll leave that running. Let me show you another kind of demo here. So this is a webhook demo. So I've got a controller here with my webhook. Let me, so it's just an API controller with a post method. And then when the webhook is called, I'm just gonna kind of print out the request headers here essentially. So I'll start debugging this one. So I will right click and say debug, new instance. All right, and then I'm going to go to, well, let me wait for that to start, actually. Where is that going to start at? Yeah, there it is. Okay, so I'm going to grab this URL. So I'm going to take that URL. And this URL, you know, sometimes it will change as well, by the way. So, you know, you always want to make sure you've got the latest kind of URL there. So in my GitHub, I have a sample kind of repository over here. I'm going to go ahead and edit the webhooks to update the URL. Okay, and I always have a double backslash there. I'll update that webhook. We can go ahead and test this webhook. Let me bring the other console here. And let me kind of lay this way. We'll bring that up. So this is the one that's monitoring the webhooks over here. So I will go to redeliver this item. Go ahead and redeliver that. I should get a notification here that the webhook has been called, but it'll actually go into my debugger. You can see that it's stopped. It's on the debugger here, so I can now inspect these items here if I wanted to. I could do a quick watch on the body. Got some info there. I'll let it go ahead and continue. We can see that the webhook has been called. Here's the request headers. We can see the GitHub ones are coming through. And then if I were to modify this, because this webhook was set as a push, so whenever there's a push that happens into my code, this webhook should be automatically called. So I should get popped back into the debugger. I did. I can continue, and then I can see my next webhook was called here. So this is webhooks basically, right? And you know, I only had to do a few things. I had to sign into Visual Studio, sign up for that private preview, and then in my properties here in launch settings.json, I set those two properties as well. Create tunnel true, tunnel authentication is set to public, and that's how we can do it. So let's go back to our kind of ice cream challenge here. Let's see who's the winner here. All right, we got Strawberry as the winner. Wow, the Strawberry was kind of far behind. Totally surprised at Strawberry, but I'll go ahead and give it an additional vote as well.
There's
We will call
some
Strawberry as
speculation
the
somebody
winner.
may have built a bot.
Yeah, probably. Okay, we'll keep that running, and maybe I'll tweet out the final kind of result at the end of the show here, John. But yeah, I think that was kind of it for ASP.NET. Was there any questions that came through?
Yeah, a few questions. Let me let's take a look here. Is that okay? Okay, so going way back to templates, but I just thought this was useful. Is there a requirement that you need like a Windows SDK or whatever when you're building template nupkegs?
No, you don't. So so if I were to go to that AKA link, aka.ms netcore templates. So here we can see that everything has been done with .NET CLI over here. So, and I think I have a sample of. So in the past, you had to use a new spec file. That was the problem, right? You had to use a new spec file, and that required NuGet.exe. But now you don't need a new spec file anymore. You can do it with a vanilla CS proj with .NET Pack. And I even have templates for that. So if you go to NuGet.org and you search for Syed Ha, if I can spell it, inside syedha.templates, there is a template for that NuGet package, that NuGet CS proj basically, and that'll help you get started there. But yeah, if anybody has any questions on that, definitely do let me know. But yeah, you can do that all on Windows or Mac or Linux. Nothing specific to Windows there. Yeah, great question.
All right. Question: does hot reload work when using tunneling?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So the tunneling has nothing to do with hot reload here. So yeah, it would totally work. So let's go ahead and try that right now. So I don't want to. Let's do it from webhook sample, I guess, real quick. So I will start that project without debugging. And then, so now it's already started. I'm going to go into my webhook and I'm going to modify that to 2. I will save it. I will apply the hot reload. I'll go back to GitHub, and then we'll re-deliver this one.
You're all about the live demos today.
We'll re-deliver
impressive.
this one. Yeah, let's re-deliver that one. If I go here, did it get called? Is that my old one? Where is that? It should be here somewhere. Let me just try it one more time. Let me, I did apply that, right? And then did it work? Maybe it didn't work. But yeah, it should work.
Okay.
The tunneling is really just a connection to get to that request there, basically. To get to the machine, I mean. So yeah, let me edit this guy. Yeah.
So one other one that's just, I mean, because we're all nerds here and watching a fun live sample go, how would you think to identify a unique browser? You know, if you did want to make people vote only once, would you use like a token or something else?
Oh, if I wanted people to only vote once?
Yeah.
I don't know, actually. Yeah, that's kind of a great question, dude. I I guess I would probably, I don't know the answer, but what I would do is I would start looking through these headers to see if there's something that I can use that would uniquely identify. I got the real IP here, but even that, these headers can be spoofed or whatever.
Yeah.
So I just don't know if there's a totally reliable way to do that. I mean, we maybe I'm sure there's a good way to do it. I just don't know the answer to it, John. Some kind of cryptography. We'd have to generate some kind of secret somewhere.
That's what I'm thinking. The only thing I'm thinking going back is like generating like doing OAuth style authentication, generating a token or something.
Yeah, we would need something there. Yeah, but that's not really my realm. I make everything public. I make everything for everybody, right? So that's not in my kind of wheelhouse there.
Okay, here's a question. Is this Visual Studio specific? Can you use this with VS Code, etc.?
So I can take that one. This is Visual Studio specific today. So right now we don't have any immediate plans to support port tunneling in VS Code, but never say never.
Okay, cool. Let me see. All right, I think that's all the questions we have. That was awesome.
I think Julia's got a Power Platform demo.
Cool. All right, let me switch over. There we go.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Sahid. I hope chocolate wins. I'm a huge chocolate shake fan, so keep go voting for chocolate here for sure. And yeah, thank you for having me in the call today. Maybe on my role a little bit. So I am also a program manager in the developer division. I know it sounds weird. What does the local platform has to do with anything in the Microsoft developer division? I'm actually overlooking the developer experience for the low-code applications we do have with coming with Microsoft. So whenever we heard about the port tunneling feature in Visual Studio, this got us thinking. And folks who are not that familiar with the Power Platform itself, we have a construct called custom connectors. And for this particular feature, we can leverage the functionalities of the port tunneling feature itself. So it's actually a very unique and very interesting use case for the developer experience for the local platform itself. So again, I already mentioned the custom connectors. Kind of just to wrap this up, I know a lot of people probably haven't heard of this before. So the Microsoft Power Platform does have a lot of already pre-built connectors, but for a lot of scenarios or for a lot of use cases where you can't use any of the pre-built connectors, that's where all of the magic with APIs comes into place. And this is where also custom connectors come into place, because custom connectors, they are basically just wrappers around a REST API that allows the Power Platform to talk to any kind of external API itself. So yeah, for our use case and also for a lot of customer use cases out there, they are using APIs to talk to any kind of backend service there. So the demo I wanted to show you today is how we are actually using the port tunneling feature in Visual Studio Code to actually have an inner loop experience. Because the challenge we had before was to get or to test any kind of custom connector in the Power Platform itself. We first had to publish it. Maybe we even had to get it into API management, and then we're able to use it and get it into the Power Platform. So we didn't really have any kind of testing or any kind of inner loop experience. So now with the port tunneling feature, we can use the URL, and I'm going to show this in a bit, and actually have some kind of inner loop experience. And for me, also have a very great more developer experience with the local platform here itself. So yeah, kind of just to show you how custom connectors work. So you can either just create a new custom connector from blank. I've already done this here, but kind of just to show you where the URL comes into place, because you have to paste the host in here. And before that, again, we always had to publish it already, our API, then we were able to use the URL. So now that we have the host tunneling URL here, we can actually just copy paste it. And even though this one isn't published yet, we can already use it. So for my use case, what I did is I just created a very simple front-end application. which ideally maybe has been created by your business side, and now the business side is just coming to IT departments or are coming to the developers and are asking for the connection to their backend service. So kind of just to show you right now, because I haven't started the connection yet, if I do hit the get button here, you can see the little bubbles up there that is trying to make the connection, but it's actually gonna fail because, as you can see, we haven't connected it yet locally or hosted on Azure. So now that I have this in place, I'm gonna basically do the same thing Sahid has already showed. So in my launch settings file, I'm just adding the two profile properties here, create tunnel and also tunnel authentication public. And now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hit the F5 button here, which is going to open up and create this port tunneling host. And here you can see now I have the URL. So what I would typically do next is I would copy paste it and then based on this create this custom connector I just showed you before. Now, because I've already done this, I only need to embed the custom connector into my Power App here itself. And this can easily be done by just adding it as a different data source. So here you can see I already added the custom connector here. How can I call my custom connector? So the Power Platform has something called like a formula bar up here. So every time I want to make my API call, I basically just have to reference it. And with this function, what I'm doing is I'm creating, with Clear and Collect, I'm creating a local database within my Power App itself. And based on this, I can do whatever fun stuff I envisioned within my application. So now that I'm enabled this port tunneling feature, and now I also integrated this custom connector, you can see I am getting all of my data just by locally hosting this API here, just to also show you what this Clear and Collect function does. So I talked about this local database collection. So here you can see my API call is also successful. So now, for example, why is this interesting from a Power Platform perspective? We didn't have any kind of inner loop experience before. Now, first of all, I want to test my web API before even publishing it. Or also, I want to debug my web API here. So let's just simply show what I could do. I'm just going to put a breakpoint here. And I'm going to hit the Get Weather button one more time. And you can see now you even have the functionalities to locally debug your web API with the Power Platform together. And this gives you a great developer experience within the Power Platform itself and makes it more, just having a better inner loop experience here as well. Awesome.
That is really cool. It's funny, we actually manage these shows. We do all the scheduling and stuff using Power Automate. And I'm thinking now I should be having Power App to manage some of that as well. But it's funny, people fill in a form and then the form goes through a flow. And also I'm thinking about some of the being able to test and interactively develop that using port tunneling would be a lot easier than some of the hacks I've gone through.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Power Automate. So these constructs of the custom connectors, they are also now, because I published it within an environment of the Power Platform, this custom connector is now also available in Power Automate. So if you would, for example, debug anything within, or you want to test this API from a flow perspective, this is also possible with the same construct. So yeah, it works both ways.
Very cool. And some people noticing Power Apps kind of for the first time. So you're showing a mobile app. You can create, is that kind of the main form factor that you develop for, or?
Yeah, so actually whenever you open up or you create a new Power Apps canvas, you have the possibility to choose between two layouts. So one is the mobile app, which to be honest, I've seen most likely with customers being used as well. But you also have the possibility to just create any kind of tablet format or any wider screen you need. So for example, if you want to create any kind of dashboard, yeah, depending on the use case, I would say, but you have different options as well.
Very cool. Let me see. I'm trying to think if there are any other. I mean, I haven't seen other questions come on. I think this is really straightforward.
There was a question about the URL.
Yeah.
So there was a question about, hey, is the URL that's used for port forwarding, is that durable or not? So no, basically, yeah. So the URL will change, and then we've been slowly kind of working on the model that we're kind of using in Visual Studio. So the private preview that's out there today, you might experience a somewhat durable URL, meaning that you run it with tunneling and you close Visual Studio and you come back and you might get that same URL. But we've since moved away from that model, and from now on, every time that you load up your solution, you'll get a new URL basically, and that's some of the features that we're working on right now, basically. So that'll be in the kind of the next preview there, yeah.
Okay.
And then there was another question as can this be used as a data source to power query inside of Excel?
Right. Yeah.
So the tunneling is really just a way to expose your API or your web app, right? So if the URL is returning data in a way that Excel can consume that, then it should work through this tunneling URL, right? The tunneling is not going to modify anything about the results that are getting returned there. So the answer should be, if you're able to do that when you host your application on a production server, then using tunneling, it should work as well.
Cool. A few more questions coming in. Can you talk more about the org and private visibility?
Sure. So private is only for the user who has created the tunnel. So in that case, I'm signed into Visual Studio with some account. When I say create tunnel equals true and set it to private, I'm the only user who can access that tunnel. So that's what private means. Org means any user that has access to the tenant in which the tunnel is owned by. I believe that's how it works basically. But it's the organizational auth, right? So you might have it set up to where, let's say we're all working as a team, and want to be able to share my tunnel with my team, but not to the public. So I'll set my Azure account in a certain way that we're all in the same organization, and then that's when you would use org. Yeah.
Okay. Question on what ports are available for port tunneling.
Yeah. So with the port tunneling, right? You're going to go over port 80 for hitting the tunnel itself, that URL with the tunnel itself, and then whatever port your app is running on today, and that's defined in launch settings.json, will be the app that will be the port that's communicated with. So I think in my Strawberry example, it's running on port 7080, and you'll actually see that port in the URL as well. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answered the question totally or not, but yeah, when you make the request to the tunnel URL, that's just a port 80 default thing,
so it's an outbound connection from Visual Studio or whatever. So meaning, like, there's some other questions on, do you have to open some sort of, but I think if I'm understanding this right, it's when you have to do that, open a port or a protocol, that's when an external thing is making the connection to you. But if you're originating the connection, you're making the outbound connection, then you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I want to, like if you're in an enterprise environment where some kind of connections are being blocked, you might have to open some ports there. I'm not sure. Carolina, do you know anything on that aspect of it?
No, I think you covered it for the most part, but I can also follow up and respond
Okay.
here after.
From playing with this some before, I think if you originate an outbound connection on like port 80, if you know what I mean, then that kind of gets around. Then the external thing can communicate back directly to you, and you basically have created that connection. So I would guess that it's kind of just magically going to work. Let me see. There's some questions about, can I use this to publish an app? Or is it really just, so my understanding is this is a development tool, right? This is something you're using in Visual Studio. It's not something you use to publish anything.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, let me kind of explain this, right? So, let's say if you take your web app or your API and you publish it, let's say to Azure or AWS or whatever, at that point you've got a public URL that you can share with everybody, right? So you don't really need tunneling at that point, right? But if you have a web app, like let's say I've got this web app here, vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry, and then, hey, I just want to share with my friends and colleagues where I'm at with this web app, and I just want them to quickly try it. I'm not ready to publish this because it's still a work in progress. It's not working perfect, but I just want to share where I'm at. So that's one example for tunneling, right? You can tunnel it and then share the URL, and then your friends and colleagues can visit that URL and try it out. One thing to know is whenever you close that app, that URL is no longer going to work, right? They're just going to get a 404 or some other kind of 400 error there. And then another scenario, like what we talked about before with the webhooks, right? So I'm over here developing a GitHub webhook. So in that case, I need a public URL. So I'll use the public URL, and then I'll connect my debugger. And then I'll debug my webhook, and then once I get it to work, I will publish that, either to Azure or AWS or whatever, and then I'll update my GitHub webhook to have the actual published URL for that, right? So this is really a development time tool. And, to me, I don't really see a whole lot of kind of production scenarios for these tunnels. Obviously there is, but the way that, we're working on this currently is, these are for development time, for development, not for, production or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As an example, like we develop for the ASP.NET, for the .NET site, we have a lot of things where we work with functions and hooks and stuff, and integrating things in. When you're developing, it's a pain in the neck, and it's also, you get a new developer on the team, and they've got to get everything set up to do this development. And also, like an example you said, Syed, like say we're working together and you're like, hey, John, check this out. I just set up this survey. Does it work for you? You know what I mean? That's a great way to collaborate.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
and it's more than just the web app too, right? In my simple kind of vanilla chocolate strawberry, I'm just keeping the numbers in memory. But imagine, if I was actually storing that into a database, right? So on my local machine, it's probably writing to LocalDB. So, it's very easy to share that because, it works on my machine. So then I can share it works on my machine with somebody else. But if I wanted to publish it, I'd have to publish the web app. I'd have to publish the database. That's a lot of work, right? And also think about that Power Platform scenario, right? You're developing an API to be used with Power Platform. But the Power Platform needs a public API that it can work with. So imagine you've got a bug, right? Oh, there's some kind of bug in this API, right? So you fire up your Visual Studio, you make some changes, and if you don't have tunneling, you literally write the code to make your changes, publish it to a public URL, and then you try it through your Power Platform. You realize, hey, it's still not working, and you can't attach a debugger, right? So that is a very kind of slow process. But now all of a sudden you add tunneling, and then you connect your live Power Platform app to your actual local host machine, and then you can step through it. You can make all the changes that you need. You fix your bug, and then you publish it and update it to the public URL. So that's kind of the flow there.
Yeah. And things like you showed, for instance, with working with like a GitHub webhook, I've seen things like that where especially if you're working in, say, a production system, it can be embarrassing to like, oops, I broke the bill or I broke this thing, you know. And so being able to test that stuff out locally is really useful.
Yeah.
Cool. And as Lars was saying too, being able to test on a mobile device as you're developing with a desktop, and including like all the other things, Power Platform, and but being able to like test things on your phone as you're developing is I think pretty useful.
Yeah, that is really huge, because I was developing some a PWA type of game for my kids, and they have a variety of devices, right? And man, it looks really great on my phone, and it looks great on my desktop, but then when I load it up on my daughter's iPad, it just doesn't look that great, right? And tunneling is a great kind of way to fix that. And I already shared how you can create the QR code from the Edge browser there, so you don't even have to worry about that part. It's so easy, you know what I mean? And also, all the features of Visual Studio just work as if you're running on localhost, right? Because it's just a vanilla request coming in. Debugging, stepping, hot reload, all that kind of stuff. You get the full goodness of Visual Studio.
That thing with the QR code in the browser, had that been there for a long time? I've learned
It's
about
been
that
there.
from your blog post.
Man, nobody knows about it. And I think it's because you literally have to click into the URL bar, right? You don't see it on the URL bar until you click. But man, that's one of my favorite features. But yeah, there's no extension that's required, because I also shared this with Mads K, and he was like, yeah, I've got that extension installed. And I told him, I said, you don't need any extension. It's just built in.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
There were a few questions about if you need an Azure account to use this.
Yeah, I can take this. I see a couple different questions around the Azure accounts, and then if this is specific to Visual Studio. So first, I want to say you do not need an Azure account to use port tunneling in Visual Studio. And then also, I want to counter the question, I think Andy might have asked it, about if it only works in Visual Studio. So I would actually counter that question and want to ask, how would you use a standalone CLI if we offered one to complement the port tunneling experience in Visual Studio? Would be really interested in hearing that. And I actually have that question in the form as well. So if you don't want to type in the chat, feel free to fill out the form. If we can actually bring up that slide.
Okay.
Because these are probably some really helpful links for after this session. So the first one is, again, the form link to sign up for the private preview if you're interested in trying it out for yourself. And the second half of the form includes some feedback questions for us to look at, and then an option for us to contact you if you're interested. And then the next two links are some documentation and blog posts. And then the final one is if you wanted to stay in contact with us. But yeah, you don't need to have an Azure account to use port tunneling.
I just shared the tunnel sign up link in the chat. I'll just say personally, like I ran through this from Syed's blog post, did the sign up, and like everything worked, and I was like, this is amazing. It was a very smooth experience. So.
Oh, that's really great to hear. It definitely like changes the developer experience with what Syed was mentioning earlier, like that ad hoc development where you're doing some testing and debugging.
Putting you on the spot slightly, but can you talk about do we have any stories to share? Do you know of any teams that are using this internally at Microsoft, or,
Yes. Nothing I could probably share publicly at the moment, but there are a lot of different teams across Microsoft that we're partnering with right now. So this is one experience you see of Power Platform and Visual Studio, and there's definitely more to come. But, can't talk about that just yet.
Okay. There's a question, is there a way to make the URL durable? Like we already talked through, they're not durable, they're kind of unpredictable, but is there a way to, or in the future, is that maybe on your roadmap to allow it?
We did want to make the URL kind of durable there, but in the kind of Visual Studio experience, and that was the first kind of implementation that we kind of ran out there with. But as that kind of evolved, we noticed that there was issues with that particular implementation, so we had to kind of change it to where you'll get a new URL with every solution with every time that you close and reopen the solution. With that being said, in the future there might be some paid offerings for specific URLs, and then we'll have to add, features and support for that in Visual Studio itself. But no, we don't have any there with the offering that we have now. We're not going to have any durable URLs, but in the future, there may be a way to do that, but probably not by default. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for people watching, if there, I mean, this is a great time with the team. If there are any feature requests you have or things you're thinking about, now's a great time.
I have some mock-ups if we wanted to go through those
Sure.
real quick.
By
so
the way,
basi-
Syed is famous for his mock-ups at Microsoft.
Oh yeah, yeah. I use Balsamic for these. Man, I love that Balsamic mockup tool. Anyways, so today, you have to go into launchsettings.json and set those properties. But I think in general, at a high level, I think there's fundamentally two different ways that the tunneling this tunneling offering will be used. So one is, let's say the Power Platform example, right? I've got an API that I'm hooked into Power Platform, and odds are whenever I'm running that Power Platform, I want the tunnel to be connected because I'm probably leveraging that for my Power Platform. And that's where writing those settings into launchsettings.json makes sense, so that way every time it will turn on with a tunnel. But there's the other scenario, like with the ice cream example, where I just want to turn tunneling on temporarily and share what I have, and then I'm done with it. So let's take a look at that kind of proposal. So in the debug dropdown, we're hoping to add some port forwarding option here, so we can see port forwarding and the state, whether it's disabled, so it'll be disabled by default. So we go to, you can expand it to then enable it, and then you can also set the auth to either private, org, or public, and then these settings would be connected for as long as that solution is open. When you close the solution, then it will just go back to whatever it was set to before. It would just go back to disabled, basically. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. But this could change over time. These are just some ideas. We haven't started implementing this yet. And I wanted to also double check one time on this ice cream one. So. It looks like there's somebody who's written some kind of bot over here.
Yeah, I think so.
For the
Seeing
chocolate.
as we have
voting here.
132 live viewers.
Yeah.
I'm glad my comment about the chocolate milkshake definitely gave the last boost.
I was happy when strawberry was winning. Strawberry is definitely the best.
Yeah.
I tried passing in Unicode, and somebody said they tried editing the URL and passing in cheeseburger, and did not show up cheeseburger on the list.
Oh yeah, right. Well, that's just how the app is kind of implemented over here. I only have support for those three kind of vanilla, chocolate, or strawberry. This is really a very kind of basic way to implement this. Basically, the most kind of basic way to implement this, really. So yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Any other values? They don't even.
They don't go anywhere.
They just get ignored, basically. Yeah.
Well, I had to try. Wow, awesome. Okay. Well, I don't see more questions coming in. This I don't know. I'm excited about this. I've like I said, I've been using it, and I'm excited too to now try more with Power Platform stuff. Like I was saying, we use that. It's funny, we use that behind the scenes a ton on my team for scheduling this and for a lot of other work we do. So so being able to test that stuff out using port tunneling is pretty cool.
Yeah. Awesome. We're happy that you're having a good experience, and we hope that everyone else gives it a try and signs up and provides feedback to us. And thank you again for having us here today.
Very cool. All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap up there. Thanks everyone for watching. And when there's more to share, be sure and get in touch with me. Happy to have you back on.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thanks a
Thank
bunch.
you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye bye.